everybody, and welcome back to Thinking Out Loud with myself, Patricia, and of course,
Gerry-Ann. Thank you for having me.
Welcome back to episode 2 of our podcast, How to Survive and Thrive in an Accommodating World. And thank you everybody for joining us. Gerry-Ann, it's amazing to see you back again.
Thank you.
Yes, we missed you for our first question and answer.
I had to work.
No worries, working is work.
Yeah.
But we are looking forward to having you back this Friday for our question and answer.
I look forward to it too.
So make sure that if any of you do have any questions for Gerry-Ann or myself, send it in the chat or send us an email, and we'd love to be able to address it, whichever way we can.
Thank you.
So how was your week, Gerry-Ann? I haven't seen you all week.
Yeah, I know I've been pretty busy back at coaching gymnastics, and yeah, it's nice to be back in the gym and moving around, and the kids are in there, so it's nice. How about your week?
It was good. It was busy with camp stuff, but this is part 2 or second week of camp. So we've been, a little bit more settled, know a little bit more what we're doing. How did you get into coaching? Actually, that's something I've never asked you about.
I used to coach. I used to do gymnastics myself. And then when I was like 14, 15, I was like, hey, I want to coach. So I said to my coach at the time, I said, can I come in and like volunteer a little bit? And they're like, yeah. So they trained me. And then I just started taking the courses through Gymnastics Ontario and Gymnastics Canada. Yeah. And yeah.
Now, and which kids do you coach?
I coach anywhere from 18 months to 18 years of age. So it's a big spectrum, I guess you could say.
What do you do with an 18-month?
When
you're coaching?
It is so much fun with 18 months. We sing, we dance. The parents come with them. So it's like a mommy and daddy class. So a lot of like fine motor and gross motor kind of stuff.
And I guess stretching.
They go on every piece of equipment when they're little. They go on the balance beams.
Oh.
Yeah, they're so cute, and they have their little gym suits, and some of them have their little diapers sticking out of the side. They're so funny, and they try to say my name and they can't say it.
Do you have a favorite age for coaching?
I would say 18 months, because we just have a blast. Yeah, I also enjoy teaching the older boys. They're really funny because they have no fear. They just like, Coach Gerry, watch me. And they do like crazy flips. I'm like, I can't watch. But, they're boys. They're fearless. We have fun.
So do you decide like what kind of like, not tricks, but like moves, I guess they do?
Yeah, we follow up a report card system. Okay. So yeah, they know they can't, like, especially the boys, they know they can't do the skills unless they pass that level. But they try to sneak them in there,
And then you've got to sort of like spot them and teach them and kind of go from there.
Yeah, I kind of progression it. Yeah.
Oh,
so yeah, it's amazing. I really enjoy it. So definitely one of my passions.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's neat. And for our episode this week, last week we talked a little bit about the importance of inclusion, and you told us a little bit about yourself.
Yes.
And you guys learned a little bit about myself. This week we're talking a little bit about advocating for yourself. And we're talking about, you were just mentioning actually about your gymnastics coaching. And obviously that takes a little bit of advocating as well for yourself.
Absolutely.
So could you tell us a little bit about a time where, maybe actually where you advocated for yourself and it maybe didn't go as well as obviously your gymnastics did?
Well, quite a few times I can count. So I remember once this was in university, and so what I would do my exams it's called a test center, and I'd have a reader scribe. And, I had this professor, he's like, oh, it's only like 3 questions. And he's like, you can use your reading pen, because I have a little reading pen. So it could didn't read a sentence, it read individual words.
So, sorry, I've never seen a reading pen.
Oh, I should bring it next time.
Yeah.
So it's like a laser pen. It looks like a pen, but a little bit bigger.
Yeah.
And it scans each word one at a time. So, and I have plug into headphones.
Okay.
It wasn't the best because it didn't read full sentences, which was hard for me. So, but he said, oh, it's only like 3 or 4 questions. It's not a big test. It's multiple choice. I was like, okay. So I got the test and it was like 3 pages and I was like, oh my God, I'm panicking. And it's a lot of writing and a lot of reading. So I got up and I walked out and I went to counseling and disability and I spoke to my counselor. I said, look, he said it wasn't going to be like this. I need a scribe. And she's like, no problem. We'll get you a scribe.
And what is a scribe again?
So scribe, so they read for me and they write for me.
Exactly what is written on the paper?
They're not allowed to do anything else. They're like a robot. So they sit there. If I want them to read the question 5 times, 10 times, they have to do it. So they get paid, by the school. It's usually a student, from another program.
But you're not allowed to say, like, can you paraphrase that?
No.
What is, you know what I mean?
They have to write exactly what I say.
Okay.
Nothing else. Even if it's grammatically wrong, it's all my work.
Okay.
Yeah. So anyways, she's like, I'll call the professor and, let him know that we were going to get you a scribe. So she called the professor and he's like, yeah, you know what? I'll read it to her. No worries. Come by my office. So I went by his office. I was already embarrassed because I left class. And he comes over to me, I'm sitting, and he just puts the test in front of me and he says, go ahead, and walked away. And I was like, what's happening here? Like, I was in a panic. I already told you I can't read this. I need help. And he just walked away. So I just circled all the answers and I walked out. Out and I was so upset.
And like by circling the answers, you just wrote.
I just guessed. Mm-hmm. I didn't fail the class, I guess, because I already had a good mark, but I was just he didn't get it. He didn't get it. And it was so embarrassing. It's so hard to advocate for yourself and you do it and then somebody like kind of treats you like that and you're like, it's so discouraging. So
when you take a course, whatever course, whether like when you took this course, what are the steps? So you look at the syllabus or whatever and you're like, hey, this course looks cool. I'm going to take it. So then what do you do?
So I contact counseling and disability services for whatever school. So I went to Seneca. And they would set up kind of like an IEP, but we call it an accommodation letter.
All right.
And on the accommodation letter, it just says, this student needs, double time, a scribe, like whatever. It's individualized. And your counselor and you kind of go through it together.
And you have a note from your doctor saying that
yes.
This is something that you require in order to succeed.
Yeah, I have a psych report. I had to get one. I think I had to get 3 because I had one in elementary school, one in high school, and one, because you change, right?
Yeah.
So I gave them that, and then they kind of base your accommodation letter off of that. So, yeah.
Okay, so then you bring you approach, I guess, the guidance, or you said the accommodation?
Yes, it's accommodation letter from Counseling and Disabilities.
Okay, so they read it, and they're like, okay, Gerry-Ann needs these accommodations, and then what do you do?
We print it off, and I give it to the professor.
Okay.
So it was like a book. I think it's digital now. It's been a while since I've, but before when I was in university, I'd have to just give it to the professor the first day of class. And I'd say, hi, my name's Gerry-Ann. I'd speak to him after class. This is my accommodation letter. If you have any questions, please contact me or my counselor. And look, for the most part, they would be like, okay, no problem. But you'd have a few that would not even look at it and just put it down. So, yeah.
So then that's where the advocacy kind of comes in.
Yeah, because I was entitled to double time. So I would always make sure, to my professor, if I needed it, I'd be emailing them ahead of time, just to let you know I need a little more time on this assignment. I always have written documentation because they sometimes, you never asked for extra time. Well, I did. Here's my letter.
And do you think it made a difference?
Having it written?
I guess for sure having it written so that you've got a little track record of your conversation. But I mean, just what would you say the difference between having an accommodation and not having an accommodation would be?
Success in I would say, right? Because I'm still doing the same work as any other person, but I'm just doing it a different way. I'm dictating it instead of writing it, right? So I would say, in order for myself to be successful, I needed to advocate for myself to get those accommodations. Does that make sense? Am I making sense?
Mm-hmm. And so how did you learn? Like, can you share with us a little bit about...
A lot of tears. A lot of tears and a lot of like, should I say something to the teacher? Do I do anything? You know, just kind of, especially when you're young in high school and you're like, should I tell him I need help? Do I, you know, just kind of like that struggle in your mind. But after a while, you're just like, forget it. I need help. I need, you know, I have the rights to these accommodations, right? But before I was just like, I don't want to say anything.
I guess you just don't want to say
it comes with age. Comes with age. And people, you know, peers are like, oh, how come she got an extension? Or how come she gets to write her test in a different room? So that's always been hard. People don't get it, you know, or they're like, oh, that girl's in the special ed class. She's in the SPED room. They called it the SPED.
And how do you find, like, did you find from the time you were in, like, say, between elementary to high school to post-secondary and then, well, now work, did you find that people are generally, like, there are some people that get it, some people that don't, some people that, you know?
Absolutely. There's always some people that just will not get it or don't want to. They kind of have that, like, mind block. They don't want to understand. They don't care, you know? So it's very frustrating. Like, another job I had, I went and an interview for another school I worked at. You know, I had an interview, and I had a scribe, a reader, a scribe, and everything, and I was successful.
So even for an interview,
yes,
you would ask for an accommodation.
Absolutely, in order to be successful.
I never even thought about that. Wow.
Everything. So when I go into an interview, they need to provide me with a reader and a scribe, or do it verbally. So let's say they have questions for me, I have to tell them verbally, because I would not be able to write it down.
Yeah.
So, you know, I did successfully get through the interview at this one place I was working. And then I went to kind of like a meet and greet and kind of learn about the job. And when I was there, they said something about like not being able to accommodate. And I just panicked. So I left very upset. Very upset. And I just like, because you're scared. You're like, you're putting yourself out there. And I remember they called me and they're like, well, we don't think this job is good for you because your anxiety. And I said, no, I can do it. You need to accommodate me. So that was a hard thing. I had to prove to them. So they gave me like a trial. And then once they realized, oh, okay, it was just, she was upset because she didn't get the accommodations, right? I can do the job just as well as anybody else, maybe better. But, you know, when I have that panic that they're not going to accommodate me, that worries me, you know?
So if I was an employer that was applying, and you were applying for a position, and you obviously had mentioned in your application that
I don't have to disclose it in my application.
Oh, okay. I didn't know
just
that.
when I go in.
So
like
immediately when you go into the interview, then you would be like, excuse me, but just before but they wouldn't have a scribe or anything.
Usually I let them know ahead of time.
Okay.
Depending on the job. But technically by law, you don't have to tell them.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. Like, why would you need to know that if you can't? Unless it has to do with the job itself. You know what I mean?
Yes. So technically I'm very open. So like even in my resume, I write about how I have a learning disability and how it helps me, you know, in the job. So, you know, I'm very open. So that way, you know, but technically you don't have to tell them. And if you do, they have to accommodate you. They don't always do it, but they're supposed to by law.
So if you go in for an interview then, and say you're coming in for an interview and you're sitting down, you're like, you know, excuse me, but I just wanted to let you know that I do require some accommodations for this interview. So what can I do as an employer to support that?
So hold on. Sorry, I'm just trying to understand the question.
Yeah. Like, I'm just saying, like, okay, like, say you're coming in for an interview and you're like, excuse me, Patricia, but I just want to let you know that I'm excited about this job and this interview, but I will need some accommodations in order for me to answer the questions. So what can I do what can I do to help you out?
Yeah. I would guess just kind of, what can I do? Just say, what can I do? And, I will tell you, this is what I need to be successful. I'm usually good at saying what I need. And just, usually the person is anxious. I find I'm anxious too, right? So I would just kind of reassure them that you're there to accommodate them, Yeah.
And then would it be fair for an employer too to say, in this role, what would be some of the accommodations that we could provide in order to help you be successful in this role if you do get the job? Is that a fair question?
That is a fair question.
As an employer?
Absolutely.
Or a potential employer, I guess?
Absolutely. And I would answer that. Yeah, definitely. This is what I need to be successful. And yeah.
So what are 3 things that you would say for yourself? So I guess, did you talk about what your learning disability was?
I think we kind of
last week
talked a bit about it.
It's reading, right? Like reading and writing.
Reading and writing. It's like a processing delay.
Okay.
And dysgraphia, they told me.
What does that mean?
It's kind of similar to dyslexia. I don't know 100%.
Okay.
But it's the words I'm reading. They don't connect to what I'm seeing. Like the processing is off. So what I'm seeing, I'm not understanding. I have to hear it. If that makes sense. I don't know if that's making sense, but yeah.
Yeah, so you can't just read something. I can't say, Gerry-Ann, here you go.
Yeah, I could read it, but I may not understand it. Yeah, so I could probably read a bit of it, but to fully understand what I'm reading, I would have to hear it.
You need to hear it.
Yeah, everything is verbal.
So what would be 3 things then that, everybody obviously is very different and has their own thing that kind of helps them to be successful. But what would be 3 things that you would suggest to a potential employer that
would be
to accommodate somebody that does have sort of a reading or a writing difficulty?
Well, with technology today, you just have a computer and they can do it on the computer, or they can bring their own laptop. For the most part, with technology today, I can use my phone to accommodate myself. If I need to read something, I take a picture of it and then I read it.
Because I noticed too that when we're teaching together, you do have your phone and you're sometimes I don't notice it always until you actually told me about it. But which is not that you have to cover it up, but I was surprised at how
I do it
subtly it was. So what would be some of the things that you would use? So you would use
Surrey.
Okay. So you would
speech to text, all that.
So how would you say use Surrey? What would you say?
Well, let's say I didn't know how to spell something, in class. If a kid asked me to spell something, I'd be Surrey, spell this.
And then you would just repeat it.
Yeah. I'd listen to it and then I know how to spell it. Yeah. So, or let's, I do a lot of research in class, for apps and stuff. I use Surrey all the time. I don't know if you noticed. No. So when we're researching apps that are good for our students, I'm usually saying to Surrey, I need this app. And then I look for it. It helps me because I don't know how to spell it. So even sometimes when I'm putting, there's a password in the computer, I have trouble spelling it. So I'll use voice recognition. Yeah, that's the big one. And then I have another app. It's called Speechify. You take a picture and it reads any text. It can even be on a bottle, anything. Yeah.
And what about for someone can you offer a suggestion for someone to whether it's a potential employer or a potential professor or potential student to help minimize you feeling a little bit uncomfortable or anxious about doing whatever it is that you're going to be doing with them?
It's some people have a bit of their mannerism you can tell they don't really want to accommodate you. So really try to be understanding and and kind to the person. Because I do find sometimes people are like, I have to accommodate this person now. Like it really hurts, So really be mindful of the way you know, your body language, how you're talking to that person, and really respect them. Just because they learn differently doesn't mean they can't do the job. Probably can do it better, I would say. Because I find myself, I try to compensate for where I struggle. So I make sure I'm doing extra on my job. I'm trying to make sure I'm doing more, if that makes sense. So
no, I agree. I mean, I have the pleasure of teaching with you, and that's something that I have noticed, because I'm always like, Gerry-Ann, like, you don't have to do that, or Gerry-Ann, you should just go home now.
I like to keep busy too.
Yeah,
that's also
like, I appreciate you doing this, but like, because I think, like, I do see that, like, I see you. I mean, I think that is your nature. Like, I think you're a very, intelligent, self-motivated person to begin with. Like, that's your personality. But now that you're saying this, like, maybe, like you said, like, in terms of like when you've been
try to prove myself,
when you're used to people not quite getting it and understanding what a learning disability is versus something different, or that you can't understand it, you just understand things in a different way, or you're understanding at a different pace, or whatever it is, that you try and be like super prepared and super everything, so that as much as you can in your own within your power,
I prepare a lot, or I'll take it home and make sure I work on it at home. If I need a little extra time, if there's something I need to do, I'll spend that extra time at home working on it, and then bring it in the next day. No, because I do have trouble with like cutting and stuff in my hands, and because my hands shake because of the epilepsy. So I'll take it home and cut it. Take my time, or I'll use. You have that cutter that we use.
Yes, the magical one.
Yes, so I kind of know where I so I plan it out.
And I think too, something that I've noticed as well is that I think, like anybody, when you've gone through and you've sort of been the recipient of sort of vibes that are not exactly positive all the time, you become more compassionate and more empathetic to people around you who, for other reasons or any reason really, you pick up on that because you felt that. Because I know often you'll be like, oh, like, I hope that person's okay. I just noticed that they were, and sometimes I will not have noticed it, but then when I look at them, like, when I really kind of, you can, and I just feel like it's something that maybe you're more in tune with.
Yeah, I would say,
in the sense that you can pick it up, that vibe from somebody else, because maybe
I felt it before. Yeah.
You felt it.
Or I just, I know
you've
what you're
been
saying.
there before, kind of thing, and you kind of.
I can kind of, notice. Yeah.
No, you're very, very observant.
Well, I have to be observant because I'm constantly trying to understand what's happening and like process and just I don't know. I have to take everything in.
So I think that's amazing. Like, that's one of the reasons why I think that it's so good and so incredibly helpful to have you be open to sharing just, who you are, your journey, and some of your tips and techniques, so that, we can all kind of learn to be more accommodating. And from what you're saying, it's really just like an attitude shift.
Absolutely.
Like, just being like open to trying something different, and being able to just listen, even if you don't necessarily understand everything.
That's okay.
But at least
ask questions.
Being able to
ask questions. I'm not afraid to answer questions. If someone has a question about my learning disability, even if it's a job, they don't understand, I'd be happy to answer any questions. They just need to ask. Don't be afraid to ask.
So in closing, is there one kind of piece of advice that you'd like to give to somebody who is on that cusp of, understanding that they are going to require accommodations to be successful, but are feeling like a little bit, reluctant to advocate for themselves?
It's hard. It's going to take a lot of practice, I would say. You really have to practice. You'll have days where you don't want to ask for accommodations, but once you get them, you feel so much better because you're successful in what you're doing. So, no, don't be afraid to just be like, this is what I need, and you can show everybody. Yeah. Mm.
Well, thank you very much again, Gerry-Ann, for coming.
Thank you.
This is our second episode. We would really appreciate any questions, any comments, any ideas.
Absolutely. I'm very open. You ask me, I know what to tell you.
No, absolutely. So please put it in the chat. Please send us an email. And please join Gerry-Ann and I this Friday when we do a Q&A and just hopefully answer any questions or provide some more insights into advocating for yourself. So thanks so much for joining us at Life Lessons.
Thank you.
And we will see you this Friday, I guess.
Yeah, see you Friday.
Thanks, Gerry-Ann.
Thank you.